Right. So we were talking about March the 25th, the Africa Matters Summit that's going to be taking place. Well, this is all because Africa's lack of financial resources to eliminate the impact of climate change is seeing a ripple effect on the continent's population. Yeah, solutions to this challenge will be discussed at this Africa Matters Summit hosted by Channel Africa and Wits Business School, taking place next week, Wednesday, in Johannesburg, South Africa. And the theme for this year is Financing Africa's Recovery. And one of the guests at the summit is Salem Ayenan, who's a climate advocate, who's with us on the line from Benin in West Africa. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, sir.
What's going to be your focus during this summit? What are you going to be trying to get across?
Thank you so much. I think during this summit, as youth climate advocates, we're going to talk much about the climate adaptation finance because adaptation finance is the priority for our continent, for Africa.
So, what are the big issues that you think can be solved? We know that the international community generally has let us down when it comes to climate finance. Is there something that you think we can do about it?
Yes, of course. I think we need to go through some advocacy strategies with especially those working the stakeholder of UNFCCC, and we need to rebalance the climate finance toward adaptation. Because most of the finance is directed to mitigation, and I think there is time to make some lobbies, especially during the SBs, which will take place in Germany. So we still have some time to, yes, have some discussions with the different stakeholders so that at COP 31 in Turkish, yes, things can move on.
I guess there'll be big questions in terms of, as you're saying, we're finding solutions. When we talk about these solutions, money still realistically is something that we still need to find. Do we have resources? And I think possibly for me, the biggest thing is the political will and collaboration across the continent to tackle this problem together.
Yes, of course. The political will is the very first one. And I should say that the issue of lack of finance is not just an issue, but is where the money is going. Sometimes when we were at the period of COVID-19, you see how people react, how governments, everyone was just trying to solve the situation. That's the same thing. Climate change is an emergency also, and I think that we should now realize that it's time to start funding the solutions. And after the political will, we need also to empower those young people that are working in the field. Okay.
Is the African voice being heard on these global stages?
Yes, I can say it's been heard more than before, but it's still not enough, especially where decisions are made. And too often, you see African voice are present in discussions, but absent in decision-making spaces, and particularly when it comes to finance allocation, for example. That's why we should strengthen the local leadership and youth voices, and African communities should also understand that the realities we already have most of the solutions. What we need is the direct access to funding and platforms. So we are seeing some progress, especially there are more youth-led movements emerging today, and the real change will happen when the African voice are not just consulted but trusted and resources to lead. Yeah.
Many African countries are already quite heavily indebted. How do we ensure that climate financing doesn't deepen that debt burden, but instead supports sustainable growth?
Yes, of course. That's why when we are advocating, for example, for climate finance, we always ask that it should not come as loans. Never, never. Climate change finance should come as how do you call it? As subvention. It should not come as loans because we already have a lot of debt, and I think when we come to the climate change issues, we should not have loans. No.
What outcome would you like to happen the most at the summit? What are you hoping will be a key outcome?
Okay, one of my key outcomes is that most of the stakeholders that will join this summit should focus more on the climate adaptation issues because these have priority in Africa. Also, they need to find a ways to negotiate, to come together as one voice to negotiate with the different stakeholders so that at the end of the summit, for the final declaration or any document, anything that's going out after the summit, we find that yes, adaptation is still the priority of Africa, and we need more funding for the projects. And we need also to take into account the gender equality. We need to take into account the people with disabilities, the disaster risk, and many, many aspects that are dealing with climate change in Africa. And we need to have a common voice to go to COP 31st in Turkish.
Salem, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts at the Africa Matters Summit next week.
Thank you so much.
That was Salem Ayenan, who's a climate advocate from Benin in West Africa, and he'll be one of the guests at the Africa Matters Summit taking place on the 25th of March, sharing his views on solutions for financing Africa's recovery from climate change. And that's how we come to the end